folks, and welcome to the weekend warm-up with me and him, and we're here at Silverstone. It's nice to be back, isn't it? Although it's a bit weird.
It's a bit warm, which is weird.
It's really, really warm. It's going to be 33 tomorrow, which is even warmer than it was today. Weird though, Lawrence, because there's no fans here. And you suddenly realise how absolutely vast and expansive space Silverstone is when there's no one in it.
Definitely. It was strange driving into the circuit today, no one lining that entry gate, waiting
and
to see
yet
drivers.
still queues.
Well, it wouldn't be Silverstone without queues.
I think they put them on just for us, so we had something to complain about. As you said, wouldn't be Silverstone without the unnecessary queuing. Anyway, we're here to bring you news from the paddock. It's been one of those days, hasn't it? It's been really long because there's actually been a lot bubbling along under the surface, some of it just breaking. We'll get to that in a minute. For now, though, we're down. This is like the harsh end of the paddock, right? Because when they built this new behemoth of a, whatever it is, the wing, it sort of goes downhill. And so the pit lane drops downhill and you can't see the last three garages. And so they put the three teams that they don't expect anyone wants to see down here. So you've got Alfa Romeo. No, that's not my choice.
True.
Alfa Tauri and Williams. I think it's quite harsh.
I think it's really harsh.
That they put them down here underground because that's up there. You see, that's the level of the track up there. So the pit lane just drops down, and that's why they're down here. But it has been a horrible start to the season for Alfa Romeo, hasn't it? And the last race wasn't much better. This race isn't going to be much better either. It's just they've got no power. The car's a bit of a dog. Kimi qualified worse than he's ever qualified in his life and still managed to line up in the wrong place.
Yeah, so Kimi was saying even today that it's not just the engine, it's the car overall.
Yeah.
Because if it was just the engine, they'd be up competing with Ferrari, and obviously they're not. It's going to be another tough weekend. These two Silverstone races for them is going to be really difficult because the car can race reasonably well, but in qualifying it's nowhere.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We're at Alfa Tauri. They have got engine woes, but not quite the Ferrari engine woes. It's not they're down on power, it's just the thing keeps on going boom.
Yeah, I spoke to Pierre Gasly. You get to see that interview in the pre-race show, and he was in quite a chipper mood because considering the difficult start to the season, he feels that AlphaTauri are very much in the mix, and I think that's encouraging. But they've had those technical problems all the way through, and they've kind of got to hope that they can get on top of them here at Silverstone.
Williams have flattered to deceive, brilliant on a Saturday, nowhere on Sunday. Talking to George Russell today, he said the thing for him is that he thinks they've actually weighted the car too much towards qualifying. And that if they can find that midpoint where maybe they're not so hot on the Saturday but they've got better race pace on the Sunday, that's something they might need to think about doing.
Definitely. I think the good news is also they've got some updates this weekend up on both cars, which I think is impressive because it means the correlation is working.
Yeah.
I think if you're a team like Williams and you're looking at trying to get the car better qualifying to the race, that's a massive step from last year where they didn't understand the car. So the very fact that George is talking about that shows how far they've come.
Well, it shows a core understanding of the car, as you say, which is it's absolutely pivotal. It's going to be a very interesting weekend, this one. We've gone from Austria to Hungary, two very different circuits, and then a very different circuit here with Silverstone. Medium to high speed corners. In fact, pretty much from when you get onto the old start-finish straight through to Club, they're only just getting on the brakes at Vale. You know, that's the first time they're really getting on the brakes for that whole, three-quarters of the lap.
And I think that is why you've heard teams like Ferrari and Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc saying how difficult it's going to be for them this weekend, because we've talked about power a lot.
Well, anybody with a Ferrari power unit.
Quite, exactly. Yeah. And here, you're really going to see the difference. And I think for teams like we were just saying, Haas and Alfa Romeo, they're going to struggle. And for Ferrari, the main teams, they're bracing themselves for a really tough weekend.
Yeah, they absolutely are. Who else is bracing for a tough weekend? Red Bull. We're going to get to them in a little bit, but finally, an admission from the team. The car is not all it's cracked up to be. There is an issue with that car. This an aero-sensitive circuit. They have massive aero sensitivities.
And you were saying earlier this year that car looked a bit jittery out on track, weren't you? And both the drivers have been saying the same thing. I think it's great that they come out and they've admitted that. It's going to be a question of how quickly they can get on top of those problems, because we've got these races coming thick and fast.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, there is talk. We talked about it over pre-season testing. Very different front end. They've been getting more and more extreme with the rake and how they're working on the suspension at the front, that new bulkhead and the really tight packaging, very different packaging at the front of the car than anybody else is utilising. And it looks like, I put it to Max earlier, have the team taken a step too far? Have they gone too extreme? Because if they had, if it's not something you can just pull back, the whole concept at the front is based around that. It's an interesting one. Interesting times at McLaren. Are they expecting a good weekend or not?
Both drivers in the TV pen today seem really happy. They were quite encouraged by the prospects here. I think they've been quite surprised at actually how strong they've been, relatively speaking, in the midfield. I think Lando and both Carlos have had a strong start to the season. Overall, Lando particularly.
Yes.
And I think they're hoping that in a home race on a home circuit where Carlos performed very well, 6th last year, I think they're hoping for another good haul of points.
Lando just can't do any wrong at the moment. The photo that went viral of him helping to break the car down after the last race. Actually, ever since he joined McLaren, I remember when he was in Brazil, having just left F2, he was helping the boys take the garage down. Like, he's done it all the way through. It's just what he likes to do, and that's why the team love him, I think, as much as they do. And melts your heart, his helmet competition for the weekend, the winner, 6-year-old Eva, and it's the cutest thing. And we were just talking to him about it just then, and you can see he's just under his mask, he's just beaming, he's smiling because he knows he's done something really lovely. And rather than give it to some, very well trained, very proficient graphic designer who may have given him a bells and whistles helmet, he's gone for the 6-year-old kid, and it's going to make her year.
Definitely. I thought it was really sweet that he went through all of the entries himself.
Yeah.
And like you said, he saw some professional ones done, and he said they're very good ones, didn't
yeah,
he?
of course.
But he went for the one that really kind of melted his heart.
Yeah, it's
so
lovely.
I think it's very sweet.
It's great. We've just walked past Red Bull. Simon Rennie back. That's big news. He was factory based for the last couple of years, of course, engineered Daniel Ricciardo, back into the Red Bull fold to help out Alex.
They're trying to find a solution with Alex, because I think they do genuinely feel that he's got the speed. He just hasn't been able to apply it consistently in the race. And I think by bringing Simon back, hugely experienced, his relationship with Daniel was impressive. One of the reasons I think that Daniel left is because Simon was going to go and take that factory role. So I think that just shows how important he can be on track.
Indeed. I did hear an interesting rumour in the week that, we're talking all about drivers and who goes where. I heard an interesting Sergio Perez to Red Bull rumour.
Ooh.
I don't know if it's got any basis to it, but...
Well, he's highly rated, isn't he, Checo?
But it does show you that, with them bringing Simon Rennie back to the team to try and help Alex out, their faith, their confidence is in Alex. They want to give him a decent crack of the whip. Talking about decent crack of the whip, Ferrari, earthquake at Ferrari Towers this week. John Elkann, chairman of Fiat Chrysler, chairman of Ferrari. We won't win a race until 2022. There's been a structural issue at the team for a decade.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kicking them when they're down, but it's
quite the admission, isn't it?
It is. But what does that do? What's that supposed? I mean, is that supposed to spur them into going, actually, we're going to prove you wrong and we're going to win races? What? Or is it taking the pressure off and saying, I don't expect you to win anything until 2022. Have as much time as you need, Mattia, but when the new regulations are in 2022, that's when that's it. That is your limit. That's your cut-off point for the second chances.
I think it's that brutal honesty that potentially is going to help Ferrari move forward, because maybe too often they've not admitted when things are going wrong, and like it's harsh words in one of a rare interview, big interview that he kind of really went into the depths of what is going wrong at Ferrari. But at least this gives them breathing space. It gives them some time to reset and get things going for 2022 when they can make a real step forward.
You talk about breathing space. These guys have got breathing space over pretty much the entire grid.
Yes.
They are rocket ships. The car is bolted. I mean, this is just going to suit them to the ends of the earth this weekend, isn't it? It's their kind of track.
These guys look so relaxed in the presser today because they know that they've got the best car by a mile on the grid. And like you were saying, I think that this circuit was purpose-built for that car. I think Lewis is going to be incredibly difficult to beat. But what's been really nice this year is I think Valtteri's kind of been on his, clipping at his heels. And hopefully, if he's got that start light thing sorted, which he said he did, hopefully he'll have a perfect start on Sunday.
Well, he's also made the point that he's been unhappy with certain elements of the car. Little mistakes have crept in with the team to do with, be it fuel levels, setup, just these tiny little niggles. And he's saying he's not entirely happy with it. Is that him trying to put his stamp on the team and saying, hey guys, come on, you need to give me 100%? The whole time, I can't do this if I'm only on 99% from you guys. That's
something that I don't think we've seen much of from Valtteri since he's joined Mercedes. That kind of demand, the requirement to change things for him. And I think that is probably shown that he's trying to take a step forward, maybe take a bit more of a grip inside that team. Whether or not it's going to work out, I don't know, but at least he's trying something different. He's trying a different routine to try and break that Lewis stranglehold that's got on the team.
Now, we've talked about Mercedes looking very fast. We need to talk about Racing Point looking very, very fast. They looked great last time out in Hungary. Lance Stroll coming home a strong P4. Perez, it just wasn't quite his day in Hungary, but that's the least of their problems at the moment. It was announced, of course, on Thursday that Sergio had an inconclusive test result for COVID-19. We've just heard moments ago, in fact, before we started filming this, he's tested positive for COVID-19. You spoke to Michael Massey just earlier, I believe, once that news was announced. What did Michael say about how this is all going down and obviously what's going to happen next?
Obviously, the main concern first was just that Checo is okay, and that hopefully that he's got all the medical professionals there looking after him. Then they just had to follow through and decide what happens next. And what happens next is he has to follow the UK quarantine rules, which is he has to self-isolate for 10 days, which means he'll miss the British Grand Prix and the 70th anniversary Grand Prix at Silverstone. And then hopefully, he'll come back fighting fit after that. Now Racing Point have a decision to make. They need to decide who they want to put in the car to replace him.
Well, of course, they have the Mercedes reserve drivers that they can call on. That's Stoffel Vandoorne and Esteban Gutierrez. Stoffel Vandoorne was on the post-race show F1 Live in Budapest, and he said he would be in Berlin preparing for the 6-header Formula E race out there, so he may not be able to be called on, which would just leave Esteban Gutierrez. But I saw your tweet earlier. You think there's someone else in the mix?
I think there are other drivers in the mix. There's been drivers who've driven to this team before under another guise. I think a driver like Nico Hülkenberg could easily work for them.
Would he fit in the car? And does he have? I mean, they've got his seat mould still, but is that going to fit in? Is he going to fit in the car?
It's a good question, because this car's obviously changed a lot since he was last in it. But I think that he, for them, would fit in very well. He's raced for the team obviously before. He's got recent experience, having been on the grid last year.
In a Renault?
In a Renault, but in current Formula One machinery.
Yeah, but Gutierrez has had experience of driving the Mercedes in the sim.
He has, and probably done a lot of laps.
And it's a pretty similar car.
Which I think is good for them. They've now got two really good options, haven't they?
Absolutely. So yes, but as you say, we wish Sergio well, of course. As we come down here, we'll just point it out on the right hand side, we've got a bit of a management powwow, I think, probably trying to decide what on earth to do. We wish him well, we wish him the best. It must also be pointed out that Sergio, of course, didn't come to the track today. The team members that had come into contact with Sergio yesterday had also been isolating as well, and that proves, I think, that the structures are in place, the procedures that are in place that we are all following and have been following since day one in Austria are working.
Definitely, the system works, and I think that's the key thing, is that when something's happened like this, they were able to isolate the people involved, keep them separate, and then we just have to wait and see.
And if you think about it, we're now, I think, either at or over 20,000 tests. We had the two that came back in Hungary, and then the one this weekend, and it just so happens that it's Sergio. So yeah, we wish him obviously
Definitely
all the best. Right, to Haas. Now this is a weird one, right? Car looks dreadful. Okay, in qualifying the car looks dreadful. Then roll the dice, third and fourth, car looks magic. Kevin is holding off Ferraris and McLarens, and he looks fantastic. What the hell's going on?
He's back racing again, and I think he was loving that, wasn't he? It's difficult to understand really what's going on here, and many times we've talked about Haas not really understanding their car. This year, ironically, they do.
They do. They really do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it just hasn't really panned out for them for many reasons, one of which we've talked about it before, the Ferrari power unit.
Yeah.
But I think fundamentally the car just isn't quite as fast as they were hoping for.
No.
What I think is interesting about this weekend for them is obviously they had the shunt, they come in together to get here this point last year. Provided much entertainment on Netflix.
You're playing that card.
So I thought
okay.
I'd just get straight into it. Really.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. So I interviewed both of them today, both in the pen and then together for the pre-race show. I think Kev's getting a bit annoyed with Roman.
Ooh.
Just
tell me more, Will.
So I don't think Roman's in it. I don't think he really. He was talking about how much. Again, he was talking about how much he enjoyed being at home for the last few days, not really thinking about racing, not really thinking about Formula One. And Kevin's sitting there going, we've got a great car, it's really good. And then Roman said, car's a bit lazy. And as he said the car's a bit lazy, Kevin, he guffawed under his mask. You could hear it, he was talking, one of those kind of like, what kind of noises came out. And his eyes kind of rolled a little bit. And it's like, I think Kev is committed for the future. He sees the car is decent, they can pull results out of it. I think he's getting really annoyed that Roman's just like, whatever.
I think we were talking about this actually after the last race. It does feel like Roman's maybe a little bit more coming to terms with the fact that this might be the end of his career.
Yeah.
And that is clearly coming out when he's talking publicly. It's a shame if Kevin does feel that way, because I feel like Romain's still got a lot to give if he was really going for it. So I guess let's just see how the next few races pan out. It's been almost a year, I think, maybe even more, since Romain scored a point. That's got to come into his mindset.
Wow,
and I think, thought of that. And I think things like that is probably getting him down a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe one big result and it will change things.
We've managed to walk past Renault without really talking about them. I think, pound for pound, one of, if not the most disappointing team. Okay, Ferrari. But other than Ferrari, like pretty disappointing. We were expecting really big things from Renault.
Yeah.
And a handful of 8th places is not what they were expecting to come away from those early races with.
No way. When we left pre-season testing, we thought that they were going to be the head of the midfield and then pushing the
I
top
like to say
three.
I didn't think that.
Okay.
But a lot of people thought that. I thought they were going to be, I thought it was like just underneath McLaren.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect them to be where they are, which is kind of around, well, we didn't expect Ferrari to be down as bad as they are.
That's true.
But there's something with Renault that's just not meshing for them.
It's really unfortunate, I think, that when they've brought new parts to the car, they haven't quite worked, or when they've broken and they fix them, they've broken again. And that's never really a good sign, is it, I think? They've got upgrades here this weekend, Esteban was saying earlier today, and that is obviously a good thing, but the key is, are they going to work?
Well, that's it. I mean, obviously it's showing they're putting the developments on, but it's only a good thing if they work, as you say. But yes, we will hold our breath on that. What do you think the weekend is going to look like, Lawrence, other than pretty warm? Is it going to be a Mercedes sort of domination?
I think it's going to be very hard to beat the Mercedes here. This is their track anyway. Then they've got a gap on the field before we've arrived in Silverstone, so that's going to set them up quite nicely. I do think the racing points should figure, because it's a car that's very similar to last year.
And then who's in that second seat?
Exactly.
Or first seat? And that's the interesting thing. If it's Nico Hülkenberg, does he manage to roll the dice of putting his hat back in the ring for 21? What about Esteban Gutierrez if he gets the nod? Does he get to roll his? If they've got 2 races in a car that could theoretically around this track be the second fastest car, imagine what a lifeline that is for your career.
Huge.
If it rolls in place.
It's funny how things can change so quickly in Formula 1. Nico could get a podium. At last.
Or Sebastian and Ferrari part ways. Sebastian goes to Racing Point, early doors for Aston Martin. Carlos goes to Ferrari, Daniel goes to McLaren, and Fernando comes into Renault. And we just get it all done early. Do you think they'd be able to ink all those contracts overnight before we do FP1 tomorrow?
I don't know. I don't know if the sun's got to your head, Will.
It's been a really long day. Really long day. It's the haircut that's done it. All that sun to the top of my head. Anyway, right. That's your lot, I think, folks. Have you got anything else?
I think we've ticked everything off.
I think we have, haven't we? Great stuff. Don't forget to join us throughout the weekend. We will be bringing you more of these, which will probably be a little more cohesively thought through and explained. But anyway, hope you've enjoyed it. Our little run through the paddock. Enjoy the British Grand Prix weekend from me. Bye-bye.